I attend a lot of conferences every year. And while I'm at these conferences, not only do I get to meet amazing people that end up becoming guests of the show, but sometimes from attending sessions, there's someone on stage that's so captivating that I'm like, I got to pull them aside and ask them if they can join us on the podcast. And this is very much so the case for Gina Knox. I attended a coaching conference last year and I heard Gina speak about saving and debt freedom and financial independence. And it was so inspiring. So much so that I asked her to be on the show. And here we are. So let's talk about what our topic of discussion is for today, which is all about managing your finances when you are an entrepreneur with inconsistent income, meaning that the thought of a steady paycheck is not, it just is not part of our business. Like for me as a travel creator, inconsistent income, that is what it is. Variable income is another word that we use, but I don't have a steady paycheck. And learning how to manage inconsistent income is, I feel like, a full-time job in itself, but I'll let Gina walk us through all of that. So what would it look like if, as a small business owner, you were not only debt-free, but you had your taxes paid and your savings funded? Despite the inconsistent income, you felt financially secure and unbothered. Keyword unbothered here. Today, we're chatting with Gina Knox, a financial coach for variable income entrepreneurs. I'll raise my hand because that is me. I'm a variable income entrepreneur. In this episode, Gina breaks down 1, the biggest factors contributing to entrepreneurs getting into debt. 2, why we should prioritize saving over debt repayment. 3, how many bank accounts business owners should have. And of course, so much more. So a little bit more about Gina Knox. In her 12-month program, Small Business Money School, Gina teaches entrepreneurs how to build their business savings using her proprietary cash flow waterfall savings method, which she breaks down so beautifully in this episode. Before coaching, though, Gina spent 5 years as a small business researcher for QuickBooks, seeing the back-end financials of over 400 businesses. Time and time again, she has seen what works and what doesn't for small business owners. You can visit thoughtcard.com/Gina to learn more about Gina's coaching program, or you could check out the affiliate link that we have in our episode description. Welcome to the Thought Card, a podcast about travel and money, where planning, saving, and creativity leads to affording travel, building wealth, and paying off debt. We are the financially savvy travelers. Gina, I don't know if we met at Emancipation.
I don't even think we did.
I don't think we did, but
No.
I saw you in this beautiful, I would call it like a gown or like a beautiful white, like cream dress on
The
stage.
fan shirt.
The fan, it was screaming money. It was screaming luxurious, abundance. And you had such an amazing talk all about how like savings is a pathway to becoming debt free. And it made me think about my own personal journey and how literally that is how I was able to get out of student loan debt and do so many things. But the way you put it made me realize what I was doing behind the scenes. I am so excited to have you chat with us today because I wish I knew about your services. I wish I knew you existed when I was leaving corporate, because I fell into so many mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs make when it comes to their money management, especially with variable income. So I want to start off by asking, what are the biggest factors that you're seeing right now that are leading entrepreneurs and small businesses to getting into debt?
Absolutely. A couple things. Well, first of all, let me plug Andrea Iyama. That's the designer of the fan shirt. She's a Nigerian British designer. She's incredible. Her stuff is amazing. Go check her out. Okay, side note. The biggest things that I'm noticing that are getting people into debt, it's actually so basic that it's going to sound like when I say this, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, duh, of course. But it's like until you see it, you don't see it. Businesses spend money to make money, right? That's like our MO. So the biggest reasons that small businesses are in debt is because they're spending money on the wrong things. They're spending money and they're not making money back from it. And that is eventually going to either lead you to depleting your savings or eventually going into debt, right? Like if I go into debt to acquire something for my business and it doesn't make me a return on investment, I'm going to be stuck with the bill. And like, that's so obvious when you put it that way, but it's so not when you're in it. So that's like one of the things. Another one of the things is you don't have cash flow management, meaning there's money coming in, money going out all the time from your business bank account, and you can never kind of grasp it. And you don't know what of this is safe for me to put towards my credit card or put towards my loan. I don't really know because it's all coming in and out so fast. And then the third thing is taxes. Not preparing for taxes. Sometimes taxes create its own debt in and of itself, right? Like I have past years tax debt that I have to pay off. But more often than not, what taxes do is a surprise tax bill will eat all your reserves, or it'll take your manageable debt situation and like flip it into an unmanageable debt situation overnight. So those are kind of the three things. You're spending money on the wrong things. You don't know what is what in your bank accounts. So you don't know, like, it feels like you can never put extra money towards debt. And then taxes just like throw a wrench in the whole plan.
Well, I feel like you just read me. Because like this is my 4th year of entrepreneurship and I've had each of those items.
You're like, yep.
That tracks 1,000%. So when we are like taking stock and we're like, okay, of these 3, which of these should I be prioritizing? Which one do you feel like is the most urgent to kind of grapple with first and foremost?
Expenses, 100% expenses. Because think about it like this. Think about it like it's a bucket and you're trying to fill up a bucket with water. Your expenses, if they're not working right now, they are holes in the bucket. So you're just leaking money and you will never be able to fill up a leaky bucket. Even if you fix the tax thing, even if you fix the cash flow thing, if your expenses are leaking your extra money, it's just going to be so hard. And that's where you hear entrepreneurs say, no, it's fine. I just need to make more money and then it'll all be fixed. It's because their bucket is leaking and they literally have to make more money to keep up with the leak. And it's like, sure, you could go out and make more money, but you're always going to have the pressure of making more and more and more and more to keep up with the leaking, which is not going to feel good. It's going to feel like crap. And eventually you're going to burn out, which is going to blow up your business potentially. And it's just like, yes, it's not fun. It's super pressureful. So we have to plug the holes first. We have to. And then I would focus on cash flow and then taxes. Although maybe I'm going to switch my opinion and say taxes next because we're coming up on tax season. So it also depends on like where we are in the year, what gets highest priority. But generally speaking, I'm always going to say expenses. I think expenses are like the unsung hero of your business. If you can figure out expenses, you can control your business. Truly, you can control how much money you make. You can control your profit. You can control how much you take home. Expenses, it's like the number one skill that everybody underestimates. I think because I'm so locked in on my expenses, I've doubled my revenue every year in business for the last 5 years. And I truly attribute it to expense management, which sounds insane, but it really is. Because if you figure out how to spend $1 and make $5 every time, then of course your business is going to grow.
And I know you have an episode just on that topic. So we'll make sure to plug that episode in the show notes as well, because that's on my list to listen to. So is it as simple as an audit, like just taking a look at what your expenses are and maybe having a value, like figuring out, is this worth it, valuable to me? Like I was just before our call, there was this pop-up reminder that's your annual whatever thing is due. And I'm like, I haven't even used this all year. Cancel me ASAP. Is it that simple or is there something else that we should be thinking and looking at?
It's actually a little bit more thoughtful, maybe is the word. That's not the exact right word, but it's a little bit more thoughtful. We'll go with your expenses in your business should be solving a current business problem. Look at your current business, not the business you want, not the business you wish you had, the business you currently have. What are the problems in that business? What are the sales problems? What are the systems problems? What are the money problems? Your expenses should be solving those problems. If they're not solving those problems, you should cut them because they're probably not creating a return on investment. Think about it like an hourglass, right? An hourglass with sand falling through. That bottleneck is keeping the sand trickling really slowly. If I open the bottleneck, the sand will fall through instantly. When you solve current problems in your business, you open bottlenecks, which means the return on investment is instant. So if you're investing something and you're like, but this will have a return on investment in 3 years, I'm sorry, but you may not make it to 3 years if you don't solve the current problems first. So a lot of people are wasting money on future problems. That was my big problem area. I loved spending money on future problems because it made me feel so smart and like, I'm going to get ahead of it, but it never worked. You also might be doing identity spending money to try to make yourself feel more successful. You might be doing boredom spending, like, oh, my business has just got so boring. So I'm going to spice it up with a retreat or a rebrand or a whatever, right? So really looking from the lens of, is every expense solving a current problem in my business? And are those expenses creating a return on investment? If they're not, you got to cut them out. And it's not just about cutting. It's also about repositioning, asking yourself, okay, well, what problems could I be solving with the money I save from not spending money over here? That will probably create a return for you.
And this is so different when you have a W-9, when you have a steady paycheck. Like, these are things that I never had to think about. It
Yeah.
was very set it, forget it, just watch it grow kind of
So
thing.
different. And this is why I say stop taking personal finance advice and applying it to your business. Personal finance has its own set of goals. The goal is really generally like increase your net worth, right? Business finance, the goal is generally profit, maybe stability, growth. The strategies for those two things are immensely different. So when people try and apply personal finance to business, because really personal finance advice is the majority of financial advice on the internet, it just doesn't work because it's so different.
And that's why when I saw you speak on stage, it was just like a bright, refreshing light for me. I was like, oh my God, Gina's amazing. So I want to pivot very slightly because I want to focus this episode on savings and debt repayment and how that works when you're an entrepreneur or you're, side hustling or have a small business. So why did you say on stage something to the extent of savings is the way to get out of debt and to repay your debt faster?
Okay, it's so simple. Ready? You got into debt because you didn't have the money that you needed. You pay off debt by having money in your bank account. How do you get money in your bank account? By saving. And it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about expenses. It's like, okay, if you view it from that lens, if you're like, my goal is to build savings, then you're going to ask yourself, how can I build savings? And then you're going to do those actions. And that's what we really need to get you to do to pay off the debt to begin with. So it's a little bit of like, I find for some reason, at least with my clients, when we say pay off debt, we kind of go into freeze, like, I don't know how to do that. But if we go to, we just need to build savings, we kind of have a sense of what we need to do. So it gets you to do the right actions. And ultimately, we need to have money in our bank account in order to pay off the debt. Now, there's another layer here, which is inconsistent income. Every business on planet Earth has inconsistent income. This is not a problem that needs to be solved. A lot of new entrepreneurs get this wrong. They go, I need to get consistent income first, and then all these problems will be solved. Sorry, boo. You'll never have consistent income. And when I say that, I mean the amount of money coming into your bank account will always be different every single month. There's a difference between that and like, I know how to consistently sell. Let's work on that. But the amount of money coming into your bank account is always going to be different every month. So with that said, there's going to be months in your business where you break even, right? The amount of money I made is equal to the amount of money I need to spend, including my owner's pay. We'll talk about that later. There's going to be months where I go way over my break even. And there's going to be months where I go under my break even. And that is inevitable. There's no stopping that. So for businesses specifically, in order to pay off and stay out of debt, you have to have savings in your account to float you when you don't make enough money to pay all the bills. Because guess what? The bills don't stop because you didn't make enough money. And what I see happening is businesses, especially the side hustlers, the early entrepreneur, they are so uncomfortable with having debt because they've been told their entire lives debt is bad, that what they'll do is they'll take any extra money the business has and they'll throw it to the debt because that makes sense, right? Like that's responsible. That's what we should do. But then the next month, they'll have a lower than break even month. So what do we do when we don't make enough money to pay all the bills? We go right back into debt. And that keeps you stuck in this vicious debt cycle where you feel like, I'm being responsible. I'm paying off my debt. Why is it not working? It's because you have to leave a cushion for those low cash months because they will be coming. So it's a little bit of like, yes, we need to have money in our savings account to pay off the debt, but also we need to leave money in the savings account. Otherwise, you will always end up back in debt as an entrepreneur.
It feels like a puzzle. Like everything you just talked about expenses, you talked about income, you talked about debt, like they all have a role.
It's like skills stacking up together to create a cohesive, like you managing your money successfully as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to like people try to take personal finance and make it work. None of what I just said comes from personal finance advice. It would really leave you astray if you tried to do that.
And I really loved that you mentioned that inconsistent income is sort of like a consistency as a business owner, because that's something that I knew when I was leaving corporate that, of course, I don't have the steady paycheck, but to see how it actually plays out in day to day was shocking.
Yeah.
And I think that's what led to, I wouldn't say the lessons learned, not necessarily
Totally.
mistakes, the lessons learned. And it's so funny because my husband just left corporate as well. And although he watched me 3 years ago go through this, he is going through his own journey. So it's just fascinating to see how this all plays out. You mentioned building savings. What does that actually look like? How can business owners start that building savings process?
Okay. Can I teach my cash flow waterfall?
Of course.
Okay. So I invented a cash flow management solution called the cash flow waterfall. After 2020, I made $28,000 as a side hustler, which was so cool. But Gina Knox made $0 of that 28,000, right? Like I didn't take any of that home. And I remember being like, oh no, like if I want to quit my job, eventually I'm going to have to take some of that home. So here's how it works. This was why the cash flow waterfall was invented. You have 3 bank accounts. Your checking account is where all the money comes in and out of your business. Your working capital is a fancy word for a savings account. That's where your business savings go. And then your third account is another savings account for your taxes. We really want to separate working capital from taxes because either I'll see one of the two things. I'll see people have like 2 bank accounts, a checking and a savings, and then they're terrified to spend their savings because it's like tax savings, but then some extra, but they don't know how much extra. We don't want to have that. Or I'll see like 5+ bank accounts and it's over compartmentalized. And it's like, we have the same problem of like, it's too niche where, oh, I can't spend that money because that's only for this. And I can't spend that money because that's only for this. And it gets too niche. So 3 bank accounts. The way it works is so simple. I actually designed this for myself and also with a friend who has ADHD because she refused to, like, no matter what I tried, she would not do her budget spreadsheets. She just wouldn't do it. And she was like, kind of avoidant of her accounts. So she really didn't want to spend a lot of time in there. So I designed the system to work for her. It's so simple. Think about the bucket, right? We're trying to fill the bucket. Every month, water is coming into your checking account like a waterfall, and it's filling up, filling up, filling up. When do we decide the checking account is full? Because there's no full. So we have to decide. I always recommend 1 month business expenses rounded down to the nearest thousandth. So if you're spending on average $5,792 a month, 5,000, just make it a nice 5,000. Okay. So now we have what I call your buffer number. That's your new buffer number. That's the only thing you have to remember. 5,000 is full. 5,000 is full. 5,000 is full. Anytime you log into your bank account and you see you have more than 5,000, put the extra to working capital. It's like a waterfall. The bucket overflowed and you're putting the overflow to working capital. So if I log in and I have $6,000, I'm immediately moving 1,000 to working capital, even if I know I have a bill coming out the next day, because that's what the 5,000 is for. Don't put a buffer on your buffer. The buffer is the buffer. And eventually you're going to start building up your working capital. Now, let's say you have one of those low cash months, right? I spend on average of 5,000 a month, but I only made 3,000 this month. So I need 2,000 extra. Now we're going to use your working capital. So you get to use it whenever you need it. And that's why I intentionally called it working capital, because I'm like, it's supposed to work. It's not an emergency fund. It's not, I'm trying to hit $10,000 and never go below that. No, it's going to fluctuate just as much as your income does. But slowly we're going to start building it. And what you'll notice is when you do all the work, when you do the expense work, when you do the tax work, when you do the cash flow work, and your business starts becoming more and more profitable, slowly but surely, your buckets are going to start overflowing all the time. And then we know it's time to pay off debt. So it becomes a really intuitive system where you don't have to check your spreadsheets or do math, but you have a pulse on your business at any given moment, which is so helpful, because if you're not doing that, if you're not overflowing all the time, then we can have a moment of introspection and say, what's going wrong? Is it my expenses? Is it my seasonality, right? Like maybe you're a landscape architect and it's the dead of winter. So of course, we're not going to be overflowing all the time, but we can have really good conversations about what is happening in the business based on if the waterfall is waterfalling or if it's drying up. So that's how you build your savings. It's so simple. And especially when you get in the habit of doing it every time, it becomes a little like dopamine hit. And then you get more excited about doing it. And really, like, I do believe at the end of the day, what you pay attention to grows. So if you're doing this, like I recommend my clients check their bank account at least once a week, it's going to be moving.
So I just want to clarify. So can you explain the working capital? What does that look like? Is that investing in a coaching program, for example, or tools, or?
It's just money that your business needs. So it's going to look like whatever it needs to look like. It's going to look like paying the bills when you didn't make enough money this month. It's going to look like making an investment into something. It might look like saving your ass if you didn't save enough for taxes, right? It's going to look like whatever it needs to look like, but it's not for a specific reason. It's not for a specific, like I'm saving up for a rebrand. Although you're very welcome to say, I want to overflow my working capital a little extra than normal because I'm going to be doing a big rebrand. But I don't like the idea of over compartmentalizing it again, because then what people tend to do is they'll open a ton of accounts and then they'll half fill each of them. It's like, I have this account with $79 in it and that account with $2,000 and this account with $100. And it's like, what is this all for? So yeah, it gets to look like whatever it needs to be. Now, the other thing I will say is that buffer number, the 5,000, it should be an average over the last 6 to 12 months of your expenses. So that average naturally will include big one-time expenses. The big mistake a lot of people make is they go, well, I only spend $2,000 a month. And I'm like, no, you don't. You may have only $2,000 a month in set bills, but you just spent $10,000 last month on this investment. You have to factor that into your average. So the average, the buffer already has those like big lump sum investments that we make throughout the year averaged into it.
So I know there's a book, I think it's called, and like a philosophy a lot of business owners follow, profit first.
Mm-hmm.
Is that different from what you've seen to work successfully with your coaching clients?
So Profit First teaches 5 bank accounts, they do a percentage-based approach. So you have money coming into your checking, and then maybe once a month or once a week, you multiply that by a percentage and like dole it out between accounts. So you do X percent to taxes, X percent to owner's pay, X percent to profit, X percent to operating expenses. Let me be clear. I've read Profit First. I think that every strategy can work. If it works for you, I love it for you. It has not historically worked for my clients. Most of them get it wrong and it gets really jumbled and really kind of convoluted. And then also you'll have like a profit account with $79 in it that is meaningless, essentially. When you read Profit First, you realize that the author wrote it after his time in Silicon Valley. And he really wrote it for businesses who are trying to be acquired or go IPO. So the entire financial structure is designed for that use case in mind, which again, like every strategy has a place, but I just see that a lot of times it's not working for small businesses. Number one, they're taking 50% of sales as owner's pay. That's actually not what the author intended, ironically, but that's how a lot of people are implementing it. And what that means is every month I make X amount of dollars and I'm going to take 50% as my owner's pay. That's great in theory, except for what we just talked about, which is that every business has inconsistent income. So now what you're doing is you're mimicking that inconsistency in your personal finances. And what happens if you have a low cash month or a zero cash month? Do you just not get paid? That sucks. So I don't like percentage-based approaches for that reason. I also think that the percentage-based approaches, when it comes to taxes, the tax bucket is never right because you are not taxed on your sales. You're taxed on your taxable income, which is sales minus deductible expenses, minus any other deductions you may have. So saving 20% of sales is always going to be the incorrect number. So I don't love it for my clients, but that's why the cash flow waterfall is different. It's not based on percentages. It's not over compartmentalized. And the tax bucket, I have my clients do that once a month, and it is based on a more accurate estimate of your taxes. So what we'll do is once a month, we'll take your taxable income, multiply it by your tax rate, and then move that money into taxes. So that, I mean, it's always going to be slightly off because by the time you do your taxes, if you have a spouse and other income and it's always going to change. But I hope that answered your question.
No, it did. And I'm sure there are people who are like trying to compare the two. But for me, I feel like you speak my language because I like visuals and I could visually see the waterfall approach. Very easy to see. My visualization is in Iceland, so I can see those Iceland waterfalls going out there. And also percentages. It's just doing another layer of math that it's not as fun for me.
Remember, I designed this with my friend who has ADHD, and I'm also like, I'm not diagnosed, but I think I may have that number dyslexia where I flip numbers all the time. And I'm like, you're trying to make me do another layer of math? No, I just want to say 5,000. I can do the easy mental math to move it over. I don't want to pull out my calculator to know how much I have to save. I want to be able to do it quickly in my head and get out of there and go back to work.
Absolutely. So I definitely want to touch on workers' pay. I feel like, is that the correct term? Okay, workers' pay. But I would love to hear, like, since implementing the cash flow waterfall method, what happened with your friend and how has that transformed like your business as well?
Her business?
Her business and your business. Because you said there were two stories of you had your friend and you were working on this for yourself. Like, what did that look like? What was the result after implementing those strategies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this in 2021, the beginning of 2021, and I did it all year long. Now, I had just come off of a 30K cash month, and 2021 was really a hard year for me personally. My dad died in February. I had a baby in April. I was still working full time. So I went like on bereavement leave early and then right into maternity leave and had a kid. And it was the pandemic and the lockdown. And like, it was a lot. I say that to say, I started in January, the cash flow waterfall, and I started paying myself $500 a month because I was like, no matter what, if I want to quit my job, I need to figure out how to do this. And I give the personal context because, as you can imagine, my revenue tanked. And that was kind of by design. I took a maternity leave. Like, I stopped selling. I had a lot of stuff happening in my family. So I just like couldn't show up in the same way. But because I was following the cash flow waterfall, especially in January and early February, I built up my working capital really fast. And I was able to pay myself that $500 a month through the end of my maternity leave. When I came back to my business, meanwhile, I hadn't gone back to my 9 to 5 yet, but when I came back to my business and I started selling a little bit more, I was able to then give myself incremental raises. By October, I was paying myself $4,000 a month. I went back to work in November. I gave my notice and I finished working through December because I had been at that point making enough money from the business to pay my personal bills now. And I really, really recommend that approach because what it does is it creates this seamless experience where you quit your job, but you're not living off your savings. You're just continuing on and now you're living off your business paycheck. I think this is really important because the advice, I don't love the advice, build up 6 months of expenses and then quit your job. Because what happens if you do that is now the day you quit your job, the countdown timer starts. And it's you have 5 months left. You have 4 months left. You have 3 months left. You have 30 days left. You better figure it out. And then the whole time you're trying to build your business, you also have LinkedIn up. So I recommend paying yourself and then quitting your job when you can afford to live off your owner's pay. So that's what happened to me. Quit my job. 2022 was my first full-time year. And, we've been here ever since. With my friend, it was super helpful for her because she was able to organize her finances for the first time without feeling like she had to rely on willpower of okay, I'm going to be good with my finances for, 3 months and then completely fall off. She kept just kind of doing the waterfall. She was able to pay off a $15,000 credit card. And, as life goes, her business has also been tumultuous. She's had big life events happen. She's had good years and bad years. And she's recently coming off of kind of a tough year where she ended up going back into debt. She took out a big loan. And as she's still doing the waterfall and working through it, she actually just paid off over $40,000 in her loan. And now she's kind of back. So the reason I say that too is it's helped her not go out of business during the low years, which is critical because if we think about our businesses as almost like our careers and we think about the timeline of a career, isn't it understandable to say that there's going to be good years and bad years? How you manage your money in the bad years determines if you'll survive to the good years again. So I'm super proud of her that she's just stuck with it through all of the ups and downs of her business.
So with the cash flow waterfall method, where does the debt repayment come in? And does that typically look like larger lump sum payments versus just the, minimum payment of the credit card? What does that debt repayment strategy look like?
Well, obviously, we want to pay our minimums, Danielle. I know you know.
Yes.
Let's not ruin our credit. Thank you. Thank you. And your debt minimums will be factored into your buffer because that's a monthly expense. See how it all comes together. So you're still going to be paying your minimums all along. It's going to look different for every business. There's no hard and fast rule. Although if you want a hard and fast rule, what I would say is make sure your buffer's filled, right? 1 month in your checking, 2 months in your working capital. Anything extra can go towards debt. That's a great rule of thumb if you're I don't want to think about it too much. But it's always going to be contextual. So let's say you're a wedding photographer and it is April. We're going into wedding season, baby, right? And let's say your checking account is full and your working capital has half a month of expenses. But I'm about to make the most money I'm ever going to make throughout the entire year. In that case, maybe we start paying off debt a little early because we know we're going to be making a lot of money, right? So we know we're not going to have to rely on the working capital to float the business. Cool. We could do that. But let's say, you're a wedding photographer and it's November and we're starting to go into our low season. In that case, we're going to go into capital preservation mode and we're probably just going to leave your credit cards on minimum payments unless you have so much money, a year's worth of money in your working capital, then we would probably just pay it off. So it's going to be contextual. What is going on in your business over the next 90 days? And be an adult, right? Be an adult about it and decide what is your comfort level. At the end of the day, remembering the reason we want to keep cash in your bank account is for those low cash months. So all you're doing is asking yourself, is it likely I'll have another low cash month in the next 90 days? If the answer is yes, keep cash. If the answer is no, actually, I'm like really good. My MRR is set. Cool. Let's pay off debt a little faster.
I appreciate that. And I've been doing that naturally, intuitively. Over time, I've learned that. And I've also been learning that I'm projecting months ahead. It's funny, as a business owner, again, we have our business finances and our personal finances, but I've realized as a personal finance approach, like I like to have my bills set, like I have it earmarked. And that's very helpful when I have the larger cash flow months. So all things I can relate to, I understand. And I love also how you mentioned that it's all contextual and every business is going to look different. Again, it's like we're a business, but we're also a person. We have families. So that all plays together.
Oh, and you asked about owner's pay as well.
Yes, I did. I did. Yes.
My philosophy is pay yourself the same amount of money every month, regardless of sales. Half of us are out here treating ourselves worse than we would ever let the most abusive boss treat us. Do you hear me? Like, we are out here cutting our pay. We're out here like living off of poverty wages, making below the minimum wage. We would never, ever accept that from a boss. So why are you doing that to yourself? And at the end of the day, no one is going to treat you better than you treat yourself in your business. You have to treat yourself well. And that may look like starting small. That's okay. But I want you to pay yourself the same amount of money every month, regardless of sales. The way you're going to do that is by factoring your owner's pay into your monthly expenses. And that should be a part of your buffer, right? So my monthly expenses are $5,700 a month, including $2,000 that goes to me. Cool. We need to factor that into the buffer. And if we factor that into the buffer, we're already kind of behaving as if it's a non-negotiable. You obviously want to pick a number that your business can afford right now. And again, like slowly increase it over time. And we could talk about that if you want. But a lot of what I see is business owners only think about the expenses. And then they think, if there's extra, I'll take home something. And that just opens up yourself for so much inconsistency, right? Because there might not be anything left over some months. The other thing I say, like I had a client who, and I think this is really common, bringing in the debt conversation again. She goes, okay, I pay myself $2,000 a month. We decided to increase it to $4,000 because her books said she could. And she goes like a month later, I'm going to go back down to $2,000 because I have this debt that the business really needs to pay off. And I went, okay, like, first of all, you get to decide what you want to decide, but pause. If you worked for somebody and they said, hey, Danielle, listen, the business has a lot of debt we got to deal with. So we're going to cut your pay in half, but that's fine, right?
Not okay.
No.
Not okay.
No. So why are you doing it to yourself? And then the other thing is you have a limited liability company. That like is a legal distinction, and you're deciding to give up your own financial well-being for the business when you don't even legally have to. Like, let's not practice making yourself a priority in the business. Like I said, I started with $500 a month and I slowly increased it. But so many people are just not used to that, especially people socialized as women, not used to putting yourself on the balance sheet. Put yourself on the sheet. You're the most important person in the business. And here's the other thing. We didn't talk about this, but I worked as a small business researcher for QuickBooks for 5 years. That was my career before this. So I've seen the balance sheets. I've seen the P&Ls of hundreds of companies, probably over 1,000 companies at this point. The companies who are succeeding also are paying themselves. The companies who are on the brink of bankruptcy have slashed their owner's pay. And of course, like you could argue, well, they just don't have the money to pay themselves. I might argue the company who intentionally put their owner's pay in the balance sheet did the work to make the business profitable. It forces you to do the actions that you need to take to be able to bring your home money at the end of the month. And then the other thing is simple, like unless you're independently wealthy, which congratulations, Most of us need to earn money to survive. You cannot bankroll your life for years and years on end. So if you make the conscious decision not to pay yourself, get ready to close your business within a couple years because you just won't last. And that's like a really harsh way of saying it. But I say this to say, like, I want you all to stay in business. And part of that is you have to be financially sound too. So owners pay, taking home money, it's not selfish. It's necessary.
A great reframe. A great reframe. I would love to hear, do you see business owners using tools or spreadsheets, pen and paper? Is it each their own? What are you seeing out there? What do you think is the best way to keep everything simple and organized?
I see people use everything. I see people using pen and paper, which I get the allure of. It's a little bit romantic sometimes, but please, dear God, don't just have pen and paper. Especially, gosh, this is so awful. But like thinking about the fires in LA right now, I'm like, you guys, we got to have a backup. It can't just be pen and paper. Okay. I digress. I see people using QuickBooks a lot. I see people using spreadsheets. I see people using YNAB. You need a budget. Don't recommend that for business. I use it for personal, love it for personal. I don't recommend it for business, but I see people using all types of things. I give all my clients in my program, Small Business Money School, my spreadsheet suite. And I designed my spreadsheet suite to be exactly what QuickBooks wasn't giving its customers, which is ironic because as a researcher for QuickBooks, I saw like the biggest thing that pissed people off was the QuickBooks profit and loss is vertical and it's all totals. So you see like how much you spent on each category. I have it horizontal across time. So how much I spent per category in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, because I want to see trends. So that's what I give my clients. And a lot of my clients actually end up abandoning their other options for our spreadsheets because they're so simple. I do recognize that at the end of the day, sometimes spreadsheets, if you have thousands of transactions a month in your company, it might just not work. You might need something like a QuickBooks, or at that point, just have a bookkeeper. But yeah, I see people doing all types of things. Or the worst is just nothing. I see that too.
I can imagine. I can imagine, especially when you're getting started, right? You're just getting started. That can be quite tricky. So one of the things that I really love about your podcast, I was just reading the description and this one word stood out to me and it encapsulates how I would love to feel at all moments of life. But also, I think also my approach to financially savvy travel, whether it's the travel side or the money side, you said this beautifully. You said financially unbothered. And I think that's so profound and so powerful. And a lot of times when I have guests on the show, I love to talk about the nitty gritty details, but also talk about that transformation and what that makes, like how our life looks after implementing certain things. So for you, Gina, what has feeling financially unbothered afforded you, whether it's personal or business? Like, what does it look like day to day in your life now?
Okay. Hot take. I think being financially unbothered is one of my biggest competitive advantages over my competition. Why? Because what even is unbothered, right? To me, unbothered is actually the absence of thought. So I have a circumstance, as we all do, right? Like I get a surprise bill, I have an unexpected expense, I have a unexpected like refund request, whatever happens, right? A lot of times what will happen is we'll have this surprise circumstance. We will go into a spiral of, oh my God, this means my business is going to fail. What does this mean? Oh my God, they hate me. They're going to smear me. And then our emotions are anxiety, stress, panic, fight or flight. And then we act crazy because our emotions are going crazy. And so then we waste time, we waste energy. Maybe we make mistakes. We make some bad moves. We say some bad things on the internet that can never go away. Like it can cause people to do crazy things. And then the results follow. For me, unbothered is the absence of a thought. So it means, okay, I got a refund request. My thought is, okay, anyway, and we move on. And the feeling is unbothered. And what do? I either follow my SOP on refund requests, or I tell my VA to follow the SOP on refund requests. I go back to whatever my plan was for the day. I'm not spiraling all day on something that was out of my control that happened, and therefore like messing up my business. So I think unbothered is the best strategy because you're not being reactive. And specifically, you're not being reactive to financial circumstances. And as a business owner, there's so many financial circumstances. Like, I think that that's the biggest difference than being in a 9-to-5. In a 9-to-5, all you do is control your own paycheck. But in a business, it's everything. It's pricing, it's making money, it's customer service, it's taxes. So if you allow yourself to constantly be triggered by financial circumstances, you're going to be wasting hours, if not days or weeks, that I'm not wasting. So it gives me a competitive advantage, which is like, when you put it that way, it's actually kind of insane. It also just makes your quality of life so much better. Like, it's calm, it's chill, it's fine, it's unbothered.
Ushering 2025 unbothered energy, right? I am unbothered when I'm booking my flights, unbothered when I'm traveling the world, and unbothering in my business. Gina, you are so incredible. I felt like you coached me and kind of snatched my edges a little bit, but you also provided such amazing ideas, thoughts, and simplification for how we can go about running our businesses, running smoothly. So would love to hear about your coaching program.
Yeah. So my business finance program is Small Business Money School, aptly named. And basically we teach everything we talked about today and so much more, but it's all about, it's kind of like those building blocks we were talking about. It's like, you need this skill to have this skill, to have this skill, to have this skill. And when you have all the skills, what you end up having is a business that's profitable, an owner who's taking home an actual salary, taxes that are getting paid on time, debt that's getting paid off and not being regenerated, and an unbothered financial business. And that can enable you to do whatever it is that you want to do in your business. Do you want to grow? You're going to need all those things in order to grow. Do you want to maintain? Cool. Let's maintain at a much easier level so that you have way more time in your personal life. I had a client who said she wanted to just be Martha Stewart and like tend to her chickens and have her business run. Cool. Let's do that. So it enables you to do whatever it is that you want to do with your business. It's a lot of skills that we got to learn to do that. So that's what Small Business Money School does. It's kind of a traditional coaching program. It's 12 months, $2,500. We have weekly coaching. We have a curriculum. You get spreadsheets. We offer a lot of support. We do quarterly CFO reports for all our clients. So custom CFO reports based on what you need to do next. That's Small Business Money School.